Okay, so I had started shooting a different video today, but then the doorbell rang and this box arrived, and inside it was the new Orange Pi 03. So let's have a look at the specs. Okay, so we'll go through the size in a minute, but let's have a look at those specs. So all-winner H618 quad-core Cortex-A53 processor, 1 gig, 1.5 gig, which is interesting, 2 gig and 4 gig, which is LPDDR4, which is faster than the old version, Wi-Fi 5 and Bluetooth 5, so low energy, a gigabit LAN port, USB 2 connectivity and a USB-C power supply. It's got an ARM Mali G31 GPU, supporting OpenGL, OpenCL and Vulkan 1.1. Micro HDMI output up to 4K display. You've got 13-pin expansion ports which give the option of having headphones, TV out, USB 2, infrared and other functions, in addition to the normal 26-pin expansion ports. But it does have a micro HDMI on it, so it has TV out anyway. It's hidden behind this antenna. And if you're comparing it to the old Pi 02, so they're using slightly newer version of the processor, both are A53, both the same clock frequency. The onboard storage is slightly bigger at 16 megabytes, but remember that's megabytes, not gigabytes. The RAM, which is definitely the more important one, is LPDDR4, and before you only had a gig, so operating systems just aren't good on a gig. But when we got a 4 gig, we can run Linux well, and certainly Android, no problem at all. Size-wise, very similar, and you can see what it supports. So a nice recent version of Android, Android 12 TV, Debian 11 and 12, and Ubuntu 22.04. And there's all the pin information there. Micro SD slot underneath, and a recap and a load of photos. Right, let's have a look at the software. So now obviously this is early on, so if I go to Amazon, what does it say? Delivered 26th to the 28th of July. These are both US links, I think, to the UK. Well, that doesn't say. Item cannot be shipped to your selected delivery location. This is the one I've got as well. So I've got the one with the black GPIO pins, but if you have a look at the pictures, it does flash up with ones with coloured GPIO pins, but I believe they're the same model, just a variation. So let's get rid of all this. Click on download and see what's appeared. So we scroll down. So there are going to be some of these which probably aren't there. So Arch Linux. Oh, Arch Linux is already there, and they've got different versions for different RAM that you would download. Ubuntu. Oh, they've got one with the newer Linux kernel as well. Is there more than one version? Is this a folder? Yeah, also again, look, you're downloading the particular version for your device. So I don't know which device I've got. And in here there is a desktop version with XFCE, and there's a server version, so with no graphical user interface. I wonder if it's the same with all of them, that they have a specific version for the RAM. So if we pick this Debian, yeah, that's also got the different versions for the different versions of RAM. I've never seen that before, that's unusual. And then the Android images, this might be one image. Yeah, there's just one image there. So I can do that. I can download the Android image, and I can use AIDA64 to see how much RAM I've got, rather than downloading an image to find that it might not work. So yeah, let's do that. I'm going to download that image, and I would imagine I can probably just write it with Raspberry Pi Imager. It's a tiny image, look, 548. So let's click on download, and download anyway. And while that's downloading, let's just have a closer look at it here. You might even be able to tell what RAM it is by the RAM chip putting the model number into Google. Let's flip that over. So here's the micro SD card slot. If I pop it next to a Raspberry Pi 4 and a Raspberry Pi 02W, it gives you an idea of the size. I've got a 64 gig micro SD card. Let's pop that into the reader. So let's launch Imager. Imager works on Mac OS, Linux and Windows, just the same. So choose OS and use custom. Orange Pi 03 Android. Choose storage, my 64 gig micro SD card, and hit write and yes. Okay, that's all done. Actually, I was going to show the prices The top model is $33.99, which is 4 gig, but also comes with a power supply, and the power supply is a 5 volt 3 amp. I use a Raspberry Pi 4 adapter, which is 5.1 volt 3 amp, so just slightly more watts. You can see here there is a 2 gig version with the power supply, so 2 gig version without the power supply at $22.99. That's good value. And then we have $19.99 for the 1.5 gigabyte RAM, and then $17.99 for the 1 gig. So I think the 2 gig is a nice sweet spot. The 2 gig on a Raspberry Pi 4, I've run an operating system on that, and with ZRAM, actually it's fine with Linux and definitely fine with Android. Obviously, ideally you have 4 gig, and for the extra $6, I would say it's definitely worth it. The SD card slot is tiny, but it feels solid enough. That's how it fits in. So let's switch it on for a first time boot. Okay, it's staying on 0.3 watts. I might need to unzip this image and then write it. Okay, so I tried to unzip and that didn't work either, so I've had to look at the manual reluctantly. How to burn Android image to TF card. The Android image of the development board can only be burned into the TF card reader under the Windows platform using the Phoenix card software. Is there a link in here? Not here, but probably on the downloads page, official tools. I'm going to download it on this, but I'm going to have to transfer it over to a Windows device, obviously. Android image burning tool, Phoenix card, there you go. So that's what we need to download. So let's grab that. Okay, that's finished. So I need to copy that over to a USB stick and pop it onto a Windows device. So where's it gone? So this is the unzipped version, and there's the Phoenix card. So let's copy those two onto this removable drive. Let's call it Pi 03 and paste that in. Okay, so it's much later in the day. The Phoenix card 4.2.8 doesn't have an executable in it, and so I can't get it to run. So I downloaded from the Orange Pi 02 download section this 4.2.5, which does launch. So if I do Phoenix card, but it doesn't detect my SD card. Now if I try from the Orange Pi 3, which it only says to use 4.2.8, but I tried the Orange Pi 3 one just to see what would happen, and you can see this has got an executable and it does detect my SD card, but if I try to flash it, it comes up with an error. But in the documentation it does talk about a Windows redistributable that you need. So let's go back in there, and all the feedback I've seen about this Phoenix tool is not good. There isn't an official site to download it from, but it seems to be the only thing that they recommend that you can write Android to this particular device. It's different for Linux, but I really wanted to start off with Android. So let's go in the Orange Pi, go into hardware and Orange Pi 0. Let's go to downloads, and under official tools, so the Android image, so there's this VC redist _x86, so I thought I'd try and download it from Microsoft because it's a Microsoft file. VCR, there you go, x86, and I did find it. So this talks about the latest supported Visual C version, but they talk about having the older versions. So in the user manual, they talk about Microsoft Visual C++ 2008 redistributable. I've got a newer version of this, but it seems like that isn't enough. So if I go into add remove, and in this box I type visual, so it comes up with 2015, but it seems to want the older version. So we do have a 2008 version that we can have here, no longer supported. x86 version, so let's give it a try. I'll save that on the desktop. Okay, it's very small, and let's double click that, and yes, and next. I have read, install. Okay, so let's hit finish, And should we try it straight away, see if it works? So this is the 4.1.2. I want to try the 4.2.5 because the 4.2.8 doesn't have an executable. And let's see. Still doesn't find my drive. I'm going to restart with my fingers crossed. Okay, so still didn't work. So I've switched over to my mid-2010 MacBook, and I need to try it on this. Now, which drive is which? I need to find out which one out of D and F. So D is the drive that's got all my files on, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, it is. Right, so I definitely don't need to write over D. I need to write it over F. So I can uncheck that, select the image, find the Android file, which is this one. So I don't have a burn option. Let's try refreshing the drive. Now we've got loads of options. So let's try burn, formatting the card. Okay, the other one had failed by this time. So fingers crossed. Unfortunately, there's no progress at all. Start burning, just as I was losing faith. Burn success. So it'll be doing loads of partitions, which is what Android often does. My mid-2010 Mac saved the day again. And this would have every version of old Windows, because this was upgraded from 7 to 8 to 8.1 to 10. I have had 11 on it, but 10 seems to work better. Okay, so let's have a look. Let's close that one down. Find drive D. I guess that looks like it's finished. We've got green here, so let's hit close and shut down my Mac. Okay, so I've just powered on. Let's see. Oh, it's waking up my monitor. That's a good sign. Oh, and we have an orange. Maybe this is going to work. Okay, so unfortunately that hasn't worked. Okay, so back on my MacBook, they've obviously uploaded a new file because this is working now. And I've hit restore and you can see that it's successfully worked. So I've got startup checked here. I've got the Android file here. Let's hit burn and see what happens. Hopefully, as we've got exactly the right tool and everything was working the way it should be from the guide, we should be all right now. Oh, haven't had that before. It doesn't look like it's going anywhere. Okay, so good news. I did manage to get Android working in the end, and it's very snappy, really quite impressive. I did a shorts video just to show 4K video on it, but I'll go through this again in a minute. But I'm going to show the process now of how I got the install to work. I also re-downloaded the operating system on my iPad and unpacked it on my iPad. For some reason the other one just didn't work, but that combination and the installer working on Windows 10 does work for me, but it does look like it doesn't work on Windows 11. So let's show you the installation bit that did work. Okay, so let's open up the tool that has already been unzipped. Scroll down until you get to the Phoenix card executable and click yes. You can see it's detected my SD card, which I've got plugged in the side here. I can click on Startup, click on the image. Mine's on the desktop, which I unzipped with my iPad because the one I did with Linux the other day didn't work. So scroll to desktop. It's in this folder. And I'm looking for the big image, so this is 1.2 gig, not the 4 kilobyte image. Click open and click burn. You can see it says formatting the card, and it should carry on and finish the whole process now. And when you get this pop-up, it means it's all done. And you can see it's all green here, and burn end has come up. So we can close that and close all this down. And then we can eject the SD card. Pop the SD card into the Orange Pi and start up. You can see I put a fan on it, and we get the Orange Pi logo, and then the All-Winner logo comes up, so we know it's working. So I've been playing around with it, and I've installed various different things. So Ada64, which will give us all the details of the board. So Orange Pi 03, 4 gigabytes of RAM, and obviously it's showing my SD card here. We go to the CPU. You can see it's currently running at 480 megahertz, but it goes up to 1512, quad core. And we've got the thermals here, so we can see that it's running currently with this fan at 40 degrees. And if we go to codecs, somewhere along here, there's Vulkan support. MPEG 2, MPEG 4, VP8, VP9, AVC, H.264. Here it is, Android hardware Vulkan. So let's go back to the home screen. The Bluetooth works if we go into settings and click on Bluetooth. It detects my Bose speaker. So let's go into Edge and try the browser. I've got Firefox on there as well, which does still seem pretty snappy. So let's try YouTube and play a bit of one of my videos. Let's have the audio. Now we've got that speaker on. So what we're on at the moment, we're on 720. Let's just enable Stats for Nerds and show. It does drop frames, but it's not bad at 720. Well, there you go. I think now it's caught up and it looks pretty smooth. Video performance local and from a network is definitely better. Yeah, it doesn't seem to be dropping frames now. So if I press home, oh, it does this where the video continues playing on the desktop. So I've got to go back in and just pause that video. There we go. And let's go back and see what else have I tried on here. I've installed well, everything from music to the right, so DuckStation, although I haven't had that working yet. It seems to be a bit weird about permissions for ROMs, for different files that you have on there. I've enabled permissions, but it doesn't seem to be fully working. PPSSPP, I couldn't get it to work, but I've only tried it for a little bit. APK Pure, I've been installing apps with, and also the Untitled Store as well. So let's show you a bit of Kodi, because this probably is the most impressive bit. Oh, in fact, I did it a different way. So I did it from ES File Explorer, and if I navigate to, is it movies? Yeah, so I've got a couple of things in here. So this is a 4K 60. This is really quite a high-end Samsung TV demo, and this will open in Kodi, and it's pretty impressive. It didn't stream. It was too much data to stream over my network. In fact, it said something about the throughput being too slow, but that's probably quite understandable. But when you look at this, 4K 60 playing on this little device, I think it looks perfect. We'll wait for it to get into something where there's a bit of movement, so it gets a bit faster in a minute. But yeah, overall, super impressed with that. And also I found, well, I did a shorts video on this. So ES File Explorer, so if I go to my network, which is here, and my local area network, so WD My Cloud, and then if I look on here and go into this work folder, this, where is it, 4K and 4K and Elysium. So this demo, streaming over my network, plays really well. It is surprising. I'm going to cover over some of the screen because I don't want any copyright strikes, but I think you'll see that actually it's playing really well. That bit does have a bit of judder to it on everything I've played it on, but yeah, really impressed with that. So let's go home, show you a bit more about the operating system. So it's TV based Android, so it is a bit different, and some apps you'll go to install and they won't install because they're not designed for a TV environment. You find the tablet-based or phone-based Android operating systems tend to be more compatible, so if we had just a normal Android 12 without the TV bit. But then some people might want to use this as a media center. I've actually been really impressed at how well it's performed. So you can see here we've got all sorts of preferences and everything in here, so it's all controllable. And I've enabled developer options so that I could install all of this. I might do a separate video showing how to get to this point, because when you start with this, you have no real browser, you don't have an app store, it's pretty bare bones. It's pretty much, if you cut it off from this DuckStation to the right, that's all you've got. And when you go into apps, you've got very little in there, and the SD card, the file manager is really, really basic. So that's why I started off by installing the Untitled Store. And I did that by using the browser, which I can't see now. There's like an experimental browser in here. So maybe it's under System Apps. Yeah, WebView Shell. So this is the way that you're going to install things, and it's a really, really basic browser, which you can start typing in something like APK Pure or AppTide and then install something from there. But I think I'll probably show that in a separate video because it wasn't that easy for people who aren't used to setting up an SBC version of Android, you know, a more stripped down version of Android. But yeah, overall, I think the hardware very impressive, needs some work on the software. Now what I've also done, because I did complete this video but without installing Android, so I've got another bit at the end of the video where I try Arch Linux, because I got to a point where I just couldn't get Android to work, and then when I downloaded it again on my iPad, it worked fine. But you do need a Windows 10 or older device. You may need to install those files that I mentioned earlier on to be able to get that writer to work, and it's not a good writer. We could definitely do with a better solution for writing the Android apps to this, or if they're going to make these Android apps available, make it that you can install them with Balena Etcher or Raspberry Pi Imager or something like that, just like it is on a Raspberry Pi, because yeah, not many people have as many computer devices as me, and so they can just chop and change between older operating systems. But yeah, as a piece of hardware, really straightforward. Android is by far the best performance, but very difficult to install. All the Linux operating systems are going to be super easy to install. Just write them with Raspberry Pi Imager, put it on an SD card, put it in, and it will boot up. Super easy. Right, so let's go back to the part of the video where there may be references to me not being able to get Android working, and that's because at that time I didn't have it working, but obviously you've seen it now. So I'm going to try the Arch Linux version of Orange Pi OS, and I'm going to write that with Raspberry Pi Imager from my Raspberry Pi. Okay, so finally I've got something running on it. It's not Android, this is Arch Orange Pi OS, and as you can see, it's running from the zero3. Let's switch into screen capture. So at least now I should be able to see what the specs are. So this is just my monitor, so I'll just hit apply and keep this configuration, that's fine. So welcome to Orange Pi OS Linux rolling setup. So I'll just do all the usual bits here. Put all your passwords in. If you manage to lock it up by leaving it, the default password is OEM and the username is OEM, but obviously I'm changing this now. I can see Bluetooth is showing up here, that's a good sign. Let's see if it finds any of the devices nearby. Yeah, it picks up my Bose speaker. So let's click on that and see what happens. Yeah, it detects it as a loudspeaker. Okay, so finish and restart now. So it doesn't restart on its own, you've got to turn it off and then turn it on again, and that's what gets you to this state. I did see Wi-Fi come up here, available networks, there's my network. Hopefully I've remembered my Wi-Fi password. Now connected. So have we got NeoFetch to see how much RAM we've got? I suspect the speed it's going at, it's 4 gig. So NeoFetch isn't on there. HTOP might tell me some things. F2, CPU temperature. Oh yeah, there it is, memory. So 475 out of 3.8 gig. And what sort of temperature? 49 degrees at the moment. So let's close that down. And so we've got a website, wiki, forum. Yeah, it's a nice little launch screen. So we can turn that off. So under system, no Orange Pi one. Settings, other, Orange Pi Hello, Orange Pi Store, App Store for Orange Pi OS. Does that open up then? And we've got a games section as well. Nothing's come up yet. Might plug in my Ethernet cable, see if we can get it a bit faster. Connection established. Right, so let's try categories. Game category. Action shooting. I haven't noticed this on the other Orange Pis. Although it looks like there's nothing there. Role playing, sports racing. Okay, so the App Store's a bit underwhelming. Let's see what it's like on the internet speed, so I can't close it down. So Chromium, and let's go YouTube. I'll try and leave all this in real time and see how long it takes to come up with this bit. Seems all right so far for the price, you know, for the entry-level device that it is. It seems to be doing all right. So the PSP video HDR, and let's see how far down I have to scroll. There it is. And let's see how well this plays. Oh, my speaker's off because I restarted.
Connected to LA256.
I think it's connected now. Yeah, okay. So I had to cut all that out because I had to reconnect to my Bluetooth speaker. Right, so let's have a look and see. Let's go straight up to 1080. Let's get the volume down a bit. It does talk about 4K, but I reckon they're probably talking about 4K with Android, and that's one of the reasons I really wanted to try Android. You can see at the moment it's showing at 1280 by 720, and it is dropping some frames. Okay, so not 1080 then. But this is, you know, the early version of this operating system. What they might do is tweak it as time goes on. Although they have used almost the same processor in the Orange Pi 02, and now we've obviously got loads more RAM, which is great. So 720 is dropping frames. Yeah, it's still dropping frames at 720. So although this is the same clock speed as the Raspberry Pi 4, it is actually a lower grade processor, or lower model. So at 480 it seems to be, no, it's still dropping frames. Okay, so not great YouTube performance. Okay, so super impressed with this really. So when you're talking about the 1 gig model starting off at $17.99 and this model being, what was it, $28.99, it is a lot of hardware for the money. Obviously we're not getting Raspberry Pi levels of software by any means, and the writer for Android is an absolute pain and needs to be sorted out, but this is a lot of kit for the money. So I hope all this helps. Thanks very much for watching. Please like and subscribe.